don't want to die with a dick on my face.
Hey guys, Jim here. Welcome in once again. Today we're going to be taking a look at 3 awesome fixed blade knives from FOBOS Knives. Now, I've never had a chance to handle any of the FOBOS knives in the past, but that luckily has been rectified. Had a nice conversation with Eric Hansen, the owner of FOBOS Knives, and he sent out these 3 for me to check out and play with, and he basically said, do whatever the hell you want to with them, take them out, abuse them, do whatever it is that you want to do, because he has absolutely no fear whatsoever about his knives passing any kind of test that you might put them through. So what we're going to be taking a look at here is probably their most popular model or most well-known model, and that is the Tier 1. And then we're going to be taking a look at the Alaris and the Coculo. So 3 completely different models. 2 really follow in that vein of tactical style knives like the Tier 1. Now here's the thing, Eric doesn't want to really pigeonhole his knives as just one category. And honestly, I see them more as a multi-use knife than I do a pure tactical knife. As a matter of fact, one of these models is much more of a camp-style knife than anything else. When you take a look at the Tier 1, this is one that I consider to be obviously a tactical design. It has a lot of the tactical style elements, as you would hear explained by somebody like Bob Druzzola. And what you end up with, you may order it because you think it looks all tactical and stuff like that, and yes, you could use this if you have some knife fighting skills hidden up your sleeve. But when you get it, you're going to look at it and go, huh, there's a lot more that I could be doing with this knife. From the handle ergonomics to the materials that he's chosen for the handles and for the blade. The blade geometry, the way this thing cuts, and everything else, the very carefully placed jimping, the forward finger choil, the sheath that it comes with, it lends itself to being a good multi-role, multi-purpose kind of knife. Then we get into something like the Alaris. We'll open that one up very quickly. And this is the one that I look at and go, this is much more of a camp-style knife. While I do believe this is advertised as a bushcraft knife, I don't see a lot of bushcrafters using a knife like this for 2 reasons. Number one, and I've noticed some other people have brought this up, the spine of the blade doesn't have a very sharp, hard edge, so you're going to have a hard time using a ferro rod with it if you want to start a fire with it. And the edge geometry on this is such that it's not a super thin slicer. So this is going to be really good for chopping and sectioning things. It's going to be good for cutting down, cutting into smaller sticks, things like that. Really good for food prep, and I'll talk about that more when I get into the actual tabletop section of this video, and of course when I get into the individual video for this knife. This is going to be a really good food prep knife for if you are out there camping, hiking, backpacking, whatever it is that you do outdoors. This is going to be a good multi-role knife in that regard. And then we get to the Coculo. And this one, again, much like the Tier 1, just a bit smaller, is going to have a tactical style look to it overall. And I do believe it's going to have the balance that you're going to want for something like that. Not that I believe that anybody watching my videos is really out there, you know, being a super ninja knife fighter. But this is going to be more in line, I believe, than the other 2 as an EDC style knife. It's a little bit smaller, a little bit thinner, a little bit lighter in weight, easier to carry. Really, really nice balance. And I think that because of the way the blade is shaped, the way the handle feels in the hand, you're going to have a lot of different options for how you're going to cut with this. So I can see this as being a really good everyday carry backup to whatever folder that you're carrying. These all, as I've looked at them, seem to have really nicely reinforced tips as well. And I'm never going to tell you to pry with a knife, but these are going to have a little bit more beef, a little bit more meat at the tip of the blade, at least these other two in specific, that will give you the ability to do that little light prying. And this is one that if you had to, open up a can of beans or some shit like that, you didn't bring a can opener with you, this is a knife that I honestly believe you would be able to do those sorts of things with. Now, you guys know me very well that I am not an outdoorsy kind of person, and not one of these three knives is going to turn me into Bwana the Great White Hunter. But I do believe if I were going out for whatever reason, I chose to leave the comfort of my air-conditioned home and sleep out in the woods for some ungodly reason, this is probably the knife that I would be taking with me, the Alaris. The Alaris really feels really beefy, really strong, really, really tough. This one, while it doesn't feel delicate in any way, because none of Eric's knives do, they're all very thick blade stock, and they continue the same thickness all the way through the tang. They're not a tapered tang knife. You've got a really nice feel in the hand, and they all feel substantial. But this one's just begging for you to just cut into something and chop into something and just bury into a stump or something like that. And this one I kind of feel is more of a good daily balance to carry. It's not going to feel cumbersome whether you're scout carrying, you're carrying in the waistband, you're carrying off the hip. I don't think that this is going to be any kind of burden whatsoever. This is about the same weight and size as a lot of the larger size knives that I personally make. I don't really make anything as large as this. And as I bring that up, that was something that I mentioned to Eric. I said, what's funny? I said, I think a lot of people that make only fixed blades are afraid to reach out to me to do a review of a fixed blade because I make fixed blades myself. And I guess maybe they think I'm going to reject them and say, oh, hell no, because I make fixed blades. I'm not going to go out there and review or possibly promote somebody else's knife because that's competition. I don't look at it like that. I want to support everybody that makes a good quality product in this industry, and I want to support good people. So I'm really glad that I got the chance to touch base with Eric and get a chance to sample 3 of his products and see what they're really like, because while I've known about Phobos now for a few years, I've never actually laid out any of my own money and placed an order and gotten one for myself. So I've never had the chance to handle any of these. And I got to tell you, his experience in the military is evident when you look at how these knives are designed and the way they feel in the hand. Eric is somebody is kind of a certified American badass. This is somebody that came out of the military and said, I'm going to take my knowledge of not just fighting with knives, because again, how many people are really going to be out there choosing a knife for self-defense? If you are, you're a jackass, because a knife is a terrible self-defense choice. That should be your second, third, or fourth choice behind something a lot more practical and makes a lot louder noises when deployed. And so he's taking his experience of being out in the field, knowing what knives are actually used for, and not necessarily plunging into somebody's sternum, but more practically cutting into packages, cutting rope, cutting down wood, doing food prep, things like that, and not necessarily using it in defense of one's life. While they do have a very tactical look and feel to them, again, as I mentioned earlier, I think they're much more multi-purpose knives, and that may not be exactly what he intends, and that may not be the message he wants to put out there, but that's my personal thought, is I look at these knives and go, I could see a lot of utility for all of these designs, not just well, this is kind of a military design, and this is this, and it's you're going to go out there and start knife fights behind a gas station. I think it's much more of a practical style knife, all three of these, specifically with the way that they feel in the hand. So without any further ado, let's get down to the tabletop. Let's take a look at each of these knives. We'll look at the packaging. We'll see what comes with each of the knives. And I got to say, the design he uses on his sheaths is also quite impressive as well. And see if you and I feel the same about these knives, and if you can justify the medium to high price that are being charged for them. For me, they're not very expensive, but for a lot of people to start looking at knives that are, I think he has the prices right here on the outside, $340, $320, $385, you might be going, ooh, that's a lot of money for a fixed blade, because maybe you've only put a small amount of money towards your fixed blade collection, and you don't prioritize things like the fact that it's made in the USA, the high grade materials, the coatings, the finishes, the edges that are being put on these knives. That may be something that you have not experienced yet, so you haven't really been able to justify spending maybe more than $100 or $200 on a fixed blade. And I think these three knives might just change your mind. Okay, so we're going to start things off here with the Tier 1. As I mentioned earlier in the intro, this is most likely the knife that you recognize when you think of Phobos Knives. This is the one that's kind of been out there the most. A lot of people have talked about it. A lot of people have reviewed it. And it seems to be available at pretty much every one of their dealers. I will tell you this. I didn't have any good luck trying to use the Phobos website under the shopping area to look up and buy knives. For whatever reason, things wouldn't load. I don't know if that was a mobile application error or if their website's down in some fashion, but it was really hard to navigate through their website to kind of see what all the different variations and things were before I began this. But what you're looking at here is a version that is made from CPM MagnaCut. MagnaCut is a steel that a lot of people are really in love with right now because it gives you a new balance in knife making where you can bring that hardness up super, super, super high and not risk losing a lot of the toughness, because there's always that give and take when it comes to heat treating knife steel. If you want to go for crazy high hardness, you're going to lose toughness. So, chopping with the knife, batoning with the knife, something like that is generally going to be out of the question. When you get, like 64 Rockwell, you're not going to be doing hardly anything because you could be chipping and damaging that edge very, very easily doing those kind of hard use tasks. But MagnaCut gives you that balance that allows you to kind of do everything. And this Tier 1 happens to be made in MagnaCut. I know that Eric has used 3V in the past before, and I'm a big, big fan of 3V. Yes, it does rust pretty easily. However, man, that shit is friggin' tough. Really, really good stuff. So I guess it may depend on where you shop as to how aged the inventory might be. That may dictate what steel is available to you. One interesting thing that he notes throughout his website and everywhere else is the fact that they do use cryogenic tempering when they're heat treating their knives. And that's going to be a big deal for a lot of various steels. That very, very, very quick cooling process will allow the heat treat to become a lot more effective and make the knife a lot more versatile. Now, again, with a knife like this, you're more likely to be actually using a knife in this style instead of just putting it up on a shelf and staring at it and going, oh, look at the cool knife that I've got. This is probably more along the lines of something that you are going to carry for an outdoorsy adventure or something like that. Now, I don't see this size really being an EDC size, even though the sheath is set up so that you can scout carry. I love the fact that he's using the dual straps on here so that it's easier to get on and off the belt. It is set up where you can hang it off the belt as well, going vertical, so you can carry it horizontal, vertical. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is a loop for a ferro rod. Not entirely certain, and I probably should have double checked that before before sitting down to do this. You have the eyelets here for a leg thigh tie down as well. So it's a really versatile design in this sheath, and it's really, really nice. It feels really good. It's a nice grippy leather sheath that only looks like it's going to require only a little bit of break-in, and that's really probably just going to be for the snap here. That might take a little bit of stretching. No, that was actually fairly easy to get snapped. I wasn't expecting that. But you're looking at a pretty sizable knife here, so it's probably not an EDC. Overall length of 12¼ inches, blade length of 6½ inches. Holy hell, man. Yeah, that's a big ass knife for pretty much most people. The blade height is 1.5 inches. Your blade stock thickness, check this out, man. This is over 1/4 inch, 260 thou thick. 1/4 inch would be 0.25, 0.250, 250 thou. So it's just a little bit thicker than 1/4 inch, and that's all the way through from the blade to the tang. It doesn't really have a distal taper. It may appear to be that way because of the top swedge. He's done a nice clip point swedge up here at the top, and that will lessen the weight at the very end of the knife. So he's very clearly looking at this in practical terms for use. Between the size of the handle, the shape of the handle, the way that the jimping has been done, the texturing in the handle as well, you can very easily see this is a knife that was designed to be used. Now, when I mentioned earlier that some of these designs don't really have a sharp edge on the spine of the blade, this one has a little bit of a sharper edge, and it does right here as well. So if you are going to use this for outdoorsy kind of shit, you are probably going to be able to strike a ferro rod, and I'm going to assume that's why this is half moon shaped the way that it is, because it's not really a thumb depression. So I think that's probably going to be used for striking a fire starter. You could also do that here with that forward finger choil. That's got a little bit of a harsh edge to it as well. Now, I don't know if in heavy use, if that's going to be problematic. I can feel a little bit of a hot spot there, so I think if I were choked up on the blade and, maybe I was, shaving down a spike or something like that out of wood, or a spear out of wood, and if I was hitting some harder areas, I could see that kind of digging in just a little bit, but I don't think it'd be too big of an issue. And honestly, you're probably going to have gloves with you anyway, so if you're wearing gloves, that certainly wouldn't be an issue whatsoever. The jimping on here isn't going to be the type that gives you a tremendous amount of traction. It's not going to, you're not going to just lay your thumb on here and it's not just going to grip your skin automatically and lock you in. But if you're pushing in nice and hard, you're not really going to go anywhere. Plus, you've got a lot of nice milling texture set up in the scales as well, which is going to make it feel really, really secure in the hand. And keep in mind also, for a knife like this, you're going to be using it in the type of environments where your hands might be wet, they might be slick, the knife might be wet. Think of being out in the woods and it's raining and you want to maintain a good grip, so you've got all this all this, really. All this jimping all the way around the knife, so you've got a good secure purchase. And yeah, if you're one of those knife fighting kind of dudes, you've got so many different areas you can extend your reach and still have a good hold on the knife. If you've got any kind of bodily fluids, blood, or anything like that on the knife, I think that all the textures that are on here are also going to help it stay locked in as well. So what you've got here basically is a drop point design, and the edge on this is really, really good. Now, one of the interesting things that I found about this is these are all convex ground. They're actually flat to convex ground. So they're primarily flat ground, and they have a little bit of a convex to them. And the secondary bevel, the final edge, is also a convex. So it's going to give you that feeling of being even sharper than it really is. Are you going to be able to touch it up and resharpen it easily? Yeah, most people will be able to. So that's not really going to be much of an issue for anybody. And the coatings on here, I like the fact that these are coated blades, because if you are hard using the knife, it's being used in damp or wet weather or conditions, I should say, then you don't have to worry. You don't really have to worry too much about Magna Cut anyway, but you've got, 99.8% of the blade is coated. The only thing that's exposed is the secondary bevel, which is your edge. And at that point, any and all knives are going to be exposed there no matter what. Even if it's a non-coated blade, no matter what kind of finish you've got, as you're cutting stuff, you're going to be removing small bits of material from your edge anyway. So whatever you're using for corrosion inhibition, you're going to want to always reapply to your edge anyway. So if you're using something like EDCI, then what you're going to want to do is just apply it to the edge. There's no need to do anything on any other portion of the knife, because the rest of the knife is coated, and you don't really have to worry about it when you're sweating on it, or it gets dropped in the river or the ocean or anything else. You're probably going to be A-okay. Now let's make our way into knife number 2. All right, knife number 2 just happens to be the new Alaris. And as much as I really, really like the Tier 1, I think this one might be my favorite of the bunch as a utilitarian hard use knife. The Coculo might be my choice, obviously, for an EDC knife because it's smaller, slimmer, thinner, lighter weight. This one it begs to be used. As a matter of fact, as you saw, things that I don't typically do in my videos is take any of the review knives outside and beat on them, or cut anything down, or obviously not stick into a tree stump or anything. But as soon as I put this knife in my hand, I went, I want to do something with this. I want to feel this being stabbed into something. I want to feel it cutting. I did quite a bit of cutting, as you can see, as evidenced here on the blade. It does leave just a little bit of marks in the oxide PVD finish. And I do want to talk about that finish a little bit more like I did on the last one. Let me grab something here to clean this blade real quick. I want to get the wood, the tree bark, any sap or anything off of there, and see how easily this finish cleans, because I haven't cleaned it yet to know that, and I'm actually curious about that myself. Okay, what I'm actually going to do here is use 2 different products. I'm going to use the KPL Knife Shield For the actual cleaning, because I've had some really good luck with this stuff. And as far as cleaning goes, I want to thank my buddy Kevin, Lefty EDC, for turning me onto this stuff because it's really pretty awesome. Now, I know that it's supposed to be a corrosion inhibitor as well, but obviously I'm going to finish everything off by using EDCI because that is really the best corrosion inhibitor in that bottle. Holy shit, that bottle's empty. Let me go grab a bottle that's not actually empty. Okay, there is a bottle that's not actually empty. As I was saying, EDCI is the one that has been the most proven for me. I've been using it for well over a decade on everything, every gun, every knife, every stainless steel watch that I have, anything that I'm worried about keeping the finish up and not rusting or corroding. I have always trusted EDCI for it, so that's what I'm going to use after I'm done with the cleaning of this knife, and we'll see how this cleans up. So we just put a few sprays on there of the KPL knife shield and let that kind of sit for a minute. Let it eat away a little bit at what's sitting on the surface. Now, even though I've stuck this thing in trees and in tree stumps and hacked off a couple of branches and stuff with it, I don't believe that it's actually scratched that oxide PVD finish at all. I think it just left marks on the surface of the finish. Let's see. Let's give it a good scrub. And while I should be editing all this so you don't have to sit here and listen to me talk as I rub down a blade, because that's not all that interesting, I kind of want you to experience this in real time as well, to see how good these coatings are and how well the finish will actually hold up. Because that's going to be a big deal for a lot of people when they're spending this kind of money. They're like, well, you know, I don't buy coated blades because they can get scratched up really easily, and I'm worried about that. And my God, that cleaned up magnificently. Let's get a nice tight shot on that. That cleaned up really, really well. There was a lot of tree bark and a lot of wood rubbing into that. Oh, got a little spot right there, which I don't know. Bet that's gonna come right out. Yeah, look at that shit. That is a really, really nice coating. Really nice coating. Okay, as far as the EDCI goes, all you do is spray on, rub in, and wipe off. And I don't need to do the entire blade like that. It just oversprays a little bit. Rub it into that edge, that exposed steel. And this one happens to be 3V, so that's going to be a little bit more important on 3V. Because I really don't want 3V to rust. Now, I don't know if I need to send these back to Eric once I'm done with them. I'm thinking probably not, because he was like, I don't care what you do with them, beat them up, do whatever you want to do, they'll survive. So obviously he's not going to resell them in any case. So now let me dry that off better. And at the end of the day, you end up with a knife that looks like new. That's pretty great. That's a really good finish. I'm really impressed with that. Now, let's talk about the specs on that very, very quickly. This, again, is the Alaris. This is an overall length of 10.5 inches with a 5-inch blade length. Very, very tall blade. I unfortunately didn't make a note on the height of the blade. That has got to be a good 2-inch height from the harpoon up here to the edge. Once again, convex ground, just like the other knife. Really nice plunges on there too. Look at that. They did a great job on this. And the blade material, as I mentioned, was CPM 3V. Anything else? Oh, wait, 10.9 ounces. Yeah, she's a hefty girl, isn't she? Oh, yeah. I really dig this thing. As I mentioned in the intro, if I were to go out for whatever reason, I've decided that I am now an outdoorsy kind of person. And I want that multi-purpose camp knife that'll kind of do everything around camp. This is probably the knife that I would take with me out of these three. And because it's got all that weight, and it's really, a lot of it really is in the blade, it's going to be good at hacking shit. Not that I'm going to be going out and sectioning game or anything else, but I think this is the kind of knife that gives me that feeling of confidence that I would be able to do so. And I love how it feels in the hand. It fits my hand perfectly. I wear size large to extra large gloves, and all three of these fit me great, but this one in particular feels so nice. I really, really like the natural ergonomics of the tang. It feels really, really good. And they did a really good job of mating all the materials as well. One of the trickier things, and a lot of people don't think about this, they're like, oh, fixed blades must be super easy to make. They're not. You can get down to the point where you think you're completely done with the knife and you go to attach your handle scales, and all of a sudden that tang doesn't fit flush with the scales like it did throughout the entire build. When you actually ground everything down and made everything match, something changed, something shifted, and something ain't quite right, and you're like, what the shit? And these actually feel really, really good. So these were cut to the perfect size to match up with the tangs. I'm not going to assume that these were ground down by hand like I would do. I'm going to assume that these are all machine cut components, and they have machined these scales to fit this exact size, shape, and contour. So for me, this would be the knife that I would take out on an adventure, more so than the other two. I don't think the other two are going to be detrimental in any way, but I think this is much more of the all around. I can cut into pretty much anything. I can cut down pretty much anything. I can shave down pretty much anything. This is not going to be that fillet knife. It doesn't have that super slicey ability, in my opinion, because it's a little thick behind the edge. But again, there's a trick to that because this is convex. So yeah, it's going to feel thick behind the edge, but it's still going to slice like a much thinner edge would because it is a convex edge. And that's something I do on the knives that I make as well. A lot of people don't know that because I flat grind almost everything, but I do put a convex secondary bevel on my knives because it does give you that ability to just have like this laser-like sharpness that'll slice through anything. And I really enjoy that on this as well. Now let's move on to the third and final knife of this particular video. And here it is, the third and final knife of the video. See, I told you I was going to get through this quickly because I don't want to spend all day doing a group video when I know that each of these individual knives are worthy of having their own individual videos as well. One thing I forgot to mention on the Alaris is that one came with a Kydex sheath instead of a leather sheath. That was one of the biggest differences between that one and these other two. Now, we're looking at S35VN on this particular model. And I've heard a lot of people bitch about S35VN over the years. You know, if you spend enough time in knife groups and stuff like that, you hear a lot of people pontificating on a multitude of different subjects. And knife steel, of course, is going to be the most popular. And so many people will bitch about S35VN. Oh, for this higher price, I would expect something, more exotic than S35VN. Let me tell you something. S35VN is friggin' expensive. It is still to this day one of the more expensive stainless steels that you can use. So when somebody says, oh, for that price, I would expect something different than S35VN, you can completely discount their opinion because they don't know what the shit they're talking about. Because S35VN is a very expensive steel. Now, it's also still a great steel. It still holds an edge for a good long time. It's very easy to resharpen and bring that edge back. It's also easy to strop to maintain that edge, which I still don't understand why people will choose to immediately go straight to resharpening a blade instead of stropping it before they start removing material. I'll never understand it. Strop your damn blades. If the knife isn't cutting as keenly as it did when it was new, strop it. Don't overstrop it because that will actually roll the edge over and make it where it feels even duller than it was. But strop your knives before you go removing material to resharpen them. Well, I do want to show you what else comes in the box here. Here is the sheath that he has designed for this one as well. Another really nice, my God, the thickness of the leather is friggin' crazy, man. Really, really nice leather sheaths. These are expensive leather sheaths, I'll tell you that right now. I would probably oil the sheath just so that it would last as long as the knife. He's also set this up where you can run one of the steel clips through it and clip it onto something, clip it onto your belt or whatnot. You could carry this, just like the other one, in a multitude of different fashions. If you want to carry it horizontal, if you want to carry it vertical, if you want to set it up to carry in the waistband or on the waistband, whatever you want to do. What else is in this box? All right, so I saw this when I first opened these up, but I don't know what it... Wicked Wax, cutting edge protection. Works on steel, wood, leather, and epoxy, 100% food safe, all organic ingredients. So I'm going to assume this is another corrosion inhibitor product. So probably use it like Ren Wax, where you just take a paper towel or a cloth or whatever, get a little bit on there, and rub it into the steel. They're saying that it works on a multitude of different materials, leather, wood. So you could probably rub it into pretty much anything that you want to protect. I wonder if this would be a good wax to use on the sheath to give it a little bit of a water-resistant capability. So you want to oil your sheaths basically to give them a little bit of elasticity and keep them conditioned so they don't become brittle with age and dry out and things like that. You want it to be able to stretch nicely around your knife. So generally you're going to oil your leather. But this sounds like it could be used to waterproof it to some certain degree as well, like a leather conditioner. That's a nice idea. So it seems that this is being included in the packaging with the knives, and that's kind of a great idea. It's nice when you can include something to help maintain the life of the knife. One thing I do want to mention as I'm speaking about that, it reminds me about Eric's limited lifetime warranty. Basically, he says, my knives are so fucking good that you could do anything that you want to with them within reason. And if through normal use you have somehow destroyed your knife, I'll even take back just whatever unbroken section of the handle you have left and I'll replace the knife. So, while I'm sure he doesn't want you going out there stabbing this into trees and using it as a foothold to climb the fucking tree, and you shouldn't be prying open paint cans and stuff, if something under even somewhat normal use, that this knife in some way becomes damaged to the point of you can't really use it anymore, then he will replace it as long as you send back some part of it that shows that this was the knife that you had. That's pretty damn awesome. And that's something that I don't really know a lot of other makers or manufacturers that would do that. Again, it's important to mention USA made. And Phobos, for those of you that don't know or did not see the lid of the box, Phobos stands for operators by operators. Because as I mentioned in the intro, Eric spent, I think it was just under 30 years in the military, and he was a special forces medic. So again, I go back to the fact that these knives are probably not just designed to be what they look like, which is they look like fighting knives, but that they're actually used for practical purposes. You know, if you're having to listen, I'm not a friggin' medic. I don't know what the hell you would be doing, but maybe you're digging a bullet out of somebody, or you're having to land. Maybe they got bitten by a snake or something. You're having to lance it and squeeze the venom out or some shit like that. Aside from your trail needs, maybe some other basic needs that you would have while you're doing outdoorsy kind of shit. These are the knives that would work very well for that. And this one, as I mentioned earlier, would be great more as an EDC knife than the other two because it is smaller and it is lighter and it is easier to work around with. This is only 7 ounces as compared to over 10 ounces on the Alaris that I just showed you. What you're looking at here is an overall length of 9.625 inches, blade length of 4.375 inches, the thickness 187 thou thick, so considerably slimmer than the previous 2 knives. However, that is not a slim, dainty blade stock in any way, shape, or form. And as I mentioned, this also is S35VN. Now, it doesn't say what the finish is here. It almost looks like a titanium nitride coating because of the kind of charcoal gray, but the sheen that this particular finish is giving off. I mean, it could be like a sniper gray Cerakote, but it has a sheen to it that reminds me of titanium nitride coatings. And it looks to be every bit as well done as the others. Now again, if you catch things on the coating, you're probably going to leave marks like this. But as we just saw on the previous knife, pretty easy to clean off. I love the little details that have been done here. The jimping that goes through the finger choil that matches up here onto the spine of the blade. Then back here at the rear of the tang. And he really seems to like to give you the option of a glass breaker or some sort of impact tool at the rear of the knives, which is always a good idea. And everything is very gently softened. So you don't have any hot spots on the knife. The only sharp edge that you have on the knife is the cutting edge. That's it. Everything else just feels really, really good in the hand. So that's going to do me for this generalized overview presentation of all 3 knives together. I will come back over the next few weeks and showcase these individually. And I think I'm going to play a little bit more with the Alaris outside just because I kind of feel like that knife inspires me to go outdoors and just do shit. There's something about that knife that makes me go, yeah, wow. It feels tough. It feels rugged. It feels like it's made for that particular kind of lifestyle. So anyway, I will see what kind of B-roll footage I can come up with for you on that review. And I'll get back to you guys with these next 3 videos as quickly as I can. Thank you for joining me as always, and I'll see you on those videos.